Probably the debate I am most known for on YouTube is Tanjiro versus Jonathan, probably because I was one of the very few people on Tanjiro's side of the debate. Hell, my second most viewed video of all time is that original YouTube short I made all the way back in January for some reason. Thank you, by the way. Now, some of my opinions have changed and some haven't, so I figured I would come back to this topic one more time to not only update my opinion on the debate itself, but to also show that there's at least a discussion to be had here regarding this debate. Massive shout out to jojo'sbizarreadventure who helped with the making of this video, the link to his channel will be in the description below, and any calcs that I bring up in this video and any explanations basically will also be in the link in the description below. If you enjoyed this video then make sure to like and subscribe, and let's just go on with it. The main reason as to why this debate is such an interesting one, at least for me, is that it's very subjective based as to where you can place both Jonathan and Tanjiro in different ranges of power and speed, for example. Jonathan should be massively more durable than Dio is just ahead, who could survive the explosion of the boat in part 1, which would be a blast equal to around 65 tons of TNT, or a city block level plus. Jonathan should also scale to part 3 Dio in terms of strength, due to Dio having taken over Jonathan's body. While yes, a vampire does amplify one's abilities, Jonathan's body is rejecting Dio, which means that he is somewhat nerfed and should scale to Dio even if he should be just about lower than him. Especially with the feats I'm about to bring up here when these people are much weaker than Dio himself. There is the infamous feat of Julian Kujo punching meteors, which has calcs ranging between 116 tons of TNT to 61 kilotons of TNT, and while I do believe that multi-city block JoJo is most consistent with the series, considering the amount of town level and city level feats, JoJo might just be much more consistent on that level. For example, Enya the Hag could create fog spanning across an entire city, which would require the energy amount of her stand to be equal to 212 kilotons of TNT. Weather Report could create the strongest of storms and hurricanes, which would be equal to 310 kilotons of TNT. There's the infamous feat of Dio in part 1 splitting clouds, which would require 8 power equal to 4.5 megatons of TNT. While this feat is anime only and is therefore questionable it can be used, there are more city level feats besides this, as Gyatro's ice was stated able to freeze an entire sea, which would require an energy amount equal to over 1 megaton of TNT. And the sun, which was a henchman of Dio's that was much weaker than him, was powerful enough to light up an entire desert, which would then range between a power equal to 6.5 megatons of TNT and 2.23 gigatons of TNT, which is enough to destroy large mountains. Silver Chariot was even able to deflect beams of light from the sun, and this is the same Silver Chariot who could fight Star Platinum, who was holding back, the same Star Platinum who could fight Dio and even take hits from him. But how can Tanjiro even compare to feats like this? Well, the most known feat of power from Demonslayer was when Doma was on the very edge of death due to poison, but was still able to make large ice structures instantaneously, with calcs ranging between 70 tons of TNT to 321 tons of TNT. However, Tanjiro can scale higher than this. This is because he should be physically stronger than Zenitsu, who is stated able to equivalent his power to his speed. Using the KE correct formula and inputting the value of Zenitsu's speed, he would be able to output the equivalent of 2.5 kilotons of TNT or a small town level. The speed feat in question for Zenitsu is when he was able to completely blitz lightning itself, requiring him to move at over 1 million miles per hour. I normally would scale Demon Slayers to around the multi-city block to small town level scaling, but like Jonathan, there are feats greater than this. For example, Gyatro's self-destruction was able to create such a destruction on the level of almost 10 kilotons of TNT. While Tanjiro likely doesn't scale to this at the time of the feat, other Upper Moons should be much more powerful than this, and Tanjiro was able to outright defeat the third Upper Moon and could even fight Muzan. Keeping in mind that Gyatro is the 5th Upper Moon, and the levels of between the Upper Moons in terms of power can be pretty massive. For example, Tengen was able to easily one-shot Dake without even looking at her, yet went toe-to-toe with Gyatro and probably would have lost without outside help, meaning that the difference between individual Upper Moons can be pretty massive, meaning that Tanjiro could be well above this value even then. There are even some small city-level feats within Demon Slayer too, with Muzan being able to shake an entire town with power equal to 1.4 megatons of TNT. While you can argue that Tanjiro doesn't fully scale to this, there is the other feat here they probably should scale to, as the Upper Moons were stated able to bury mountains. Taking the smallest mountain to be safe here, the Upper Moons will be able to output the equivalent of 1.5 megatons of TNT. Keeping in mind again the sheer difference between each ranking of the upper moon, and this statement should even apply to the weakest upper moons, which Tanjiro should be massively stronger than. Tanjiro should be around the small city level feats if you think he should scale that high. He can even get stronger through fighting and while getting angry, and also with the Demonslayer mark. The Demonslayer mark doesn't have a confirmed multiplier besides Tanjiro saying it's a 100 times increase. I don't really buy this anymore, as if you look at the Kokushibo fight, Kokushibo was able to fight Miuchiro, Senmei and Gyomei while holding back. He fights Miuchiro, who activates his mark mid-fight, and it doesn't really change anything, and Kokushibo still stomped him with the seemingly same amount of effort, meaning that Kokushibo would have been had to holding back his power hundreds of times. Senmei then fights Kokushibo in base and does better than marked Giyu, which by the way would mean that Senmei in base is 100 times stronger than base Miuchiro by this logic. And even when Senmei activates his mark and fights Gyomei, who also activated his mark too, Kokushibo would basically have to be holding back his power 10,000 times at least within the Miuchiro battle, which just sounds improbable. Of course, you could argue that different marks give different multipliers, as despite Senmei and Giyu seemingly being tied in their base form, Kokushibo believes that Senmei is the second strongest of the Demonslayer Corps after the Gyomei. Either way, if you think that the 100 times multiplier should apply to Tanjiro, then he would be able to stomp those who can output the power of 1.5 gigatons of TNT, or have enough power to destroy mountains. Interestingly, if you think this mark applies to your speed by 100 times as well, and apply the KE calculator for Zenitsu again, he would be able to output the equivalent of 27.6 megatons of TNT. What does this all mean then? I mean, I just basically threw a shit ton of numbers at you, and I wouldn't be surprised if you were confused. Basically, you can argue either Tanjiro or Jonathan being massively stronger than the other, being able to one-shot the other, depending on what you think is viable. But it doesn't really matter if you think that Tanjiro's mountain level and Jonathan's city block level. It doesn't matter if Tanjiro can one-shot Jonathan, because Jonathan has the ability to negate durability, meaning that he would be able to one-shot Tanjiro even if he's much weaker than him. I had mistaken this in my original videos for biological manipulation, which Jonathan also has. While you can argue that Tanjiro can resist Jonathan's biological manipulation, durability negation is a different ability entirely, which Tanjiro hasn't shown resistances to. Even then, abilities-wise, Jonathan has shown many other ways of getting the one-up on Tanjiro and being able to easily one-shot him, such as, say, hypnotizing Tanjiro. Well, you can argue that Tanjiro would maybe be able to break free eventually in the same manner he was able to break out of Enmu's sleep manipulation. Not only is it headcanon since they are completely two different abilities, but it would also take a lot of time to do so, which would give Jonathan more than enough time to just one-shot him anyways. That said, you can argue that Tanjiro's sword could absorb Hamon. This is because Hamon is stated to be directly identical to sunlight and sun rays, which the Nichiren Katana can absorb. This means that Tanjiro could possibly be able to cancel out Jonathan's attempts to one-shot him if he punches his sword. But, Jonathan could really just aim elsewhere, even if it's a good defense against Jonathan's Hamon. However, if you believe that Tanjiro's sword could absorb Jonathan's Hamon, you would also be indirectly agreeing that Jonathan would quite easily win. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if we take Hamon as being literally the same as sunlight, then it would be able to move at the same speed of sunlight itself, which moves at the speed of light. You could say, well, how do we know that Jonathan's punches are moving as fast as a Hamon itself? Well, Bruford was able to outright dodge a burst of pure Hamon underwater, and Dio was able to even react fast enough to stop Hamon from causing damage to him, despite the Hamon already being inside of Dio's hand by the time, with some people calculating this to almost 9 times the speed of light. There's also the feat in part 3 where Silver Chariot, who we previously said should scale to Dio, was able to hit Hanged Man, who moves through beams of light, with Hanged Man seemingly being frozen mid-air with the Silver Chariot moving that fast, with calcs ranging between 200 to 300 to 1,200 times faster than light. It is pretty wild. This feat can also be even more impressive in the OVA, as Silver Chariot was actually moving much faster, moving at 1,290 times faster than light. Of course, the OVA isn't canon, but it's just a way of highballing Jonathan even further. I remember saying that the stand arrow can give you some kind of speed increase, as regular people being able to move at light speed would be pretty stupid and you'd have to imply otherwise. However, this is fiction, and people moving at light speed isn't as dumb as it sounds, especially when regular people like Speedwagon are being unexplainably as fast as like the zombies that he's fighting, even without a stand. Especially when you consider the fact that even if you don't buy Lightspeed Part 1 characters, the characters should still be around the hypersonic levels of speed, which even the regular person should nowhere near be able to replicate. Either way, Speedwagon would have to be either some kind of god, or it doesn't really matter that regular people can move that fast. Looking back, it was mostly headcanon, and I probably shouldn't have based the entire argument around that. But as you can see, the speed feats here are way higher than Tanjiro's speed. Even if you say that Jonathan is just light speed, and Tanjiro's mark is able to grant him 100 times faster than Zenitsu's blitzing lightning feat, Tanjiro would still be almost 5 times slower. Well, you can argue that Tanjiro can increase his speed even further with See-Through World, a technique which allows Tanjiro to perceive his opponent's actions as slow motion and predict their attacks. We are still lowballing Jonathan here as well, as the values we've already brought up for Jonathan's speed. Jonathan would range between being 41 times faster to 5,700 times faster than Tanjiro, depending on what value you think is valid. These values are simply too high to just assume that Tanjiro's See-Through World and Precognition could keep up with Jonathan just blitzing him. However, if you don't buy Lightspeed Part 1 JoJo, then Tanjiro would of course stomp. This is because the only other speed feat levels within Part 1 should be around equal to 2,300 miles per hour, as that is how fast pressurized liquids can travel, and the Space Ripper Stingy Eyes was stated to be pressurized liquid. This part of the debate and my opinions haven't changed from the point of view of, if you buy Lightspeed Jonathan, he wins, but if you don't, Tanjiro wins. That much hasn't changed, but my general opinion of Jonathan being Lightspeed has changed. So personally, I do think Jonathan wins, but I can very easily see arguments of Tanjiro winning instead. Overall, this debate did give my channel its first main break on the Versus community, even if it was an unpopular opinion, which did allow me to meet some great people who I am grateful to having the chance of speaking to now. Again, while I might disagree with my opinions of the past, I will still keep those videos up for the same reason I haven't deleted any other of my Versus videos, regardless of quality. I want to be able to show my progress as a Versus debater and as a content creator, showing you that even if you start out with absolutely dogshit videos in the beginning, you can still make it if you put the work in. Massive shout out to Jober again, he makes good content and I recommend his channel myself, and I'll see you next time.